Melania, the film, showing the First Lady like you have never seen her before in the days leading up to President Trump's second inauguration.
Here we go again.
You can come in. Good morning. My proudest legacy will be that of peacemaker.
Peacemaker in the fire. Beautiful. Together with like-minded leaders, we have a voice.
America is facing a moment of collision. From the skies, a monster storm has shattered records and claimed lives. On the streets, deep political divisions have erupted into protests and gunfire. Into this chaotic picture steps First Lady Melania Trump. She is back in the spotlight with a new film, a direct line to Vladimir Putin, and a controversial plea for unity. But in a country this divided, is anyone actually listening? Good evening. We begin tonight with the state of the nation, and right now, the state of the nation is heavy. It is heavy with water, and it is heavy with fire. If you have been watching the news, or if you are living through it right now, you know what is happening with the weather. We are looking at a monster storm that has absolutely pummeled states across the country. This is not just a bad weekend of rain, this is a historic event. As of this morning, 34 people have died. That is, 34 families who woke up today with a hole in their lives that was not there last week. Beyond that human tragedy, the infrastructure is buckling. 500,000 Americans are still without power. They are in the dark. And if you are trying to travel, to get to family, or just get out of harm's way, you are likely stuck. 28,000 flights have been canceled. That is a staggering number.
This past weekend, we saw this monster storm just pummel so many states across our country. 34 people, as of this morning, have died. 500,000 are still without power. 28,000 flights have been canceled. That's the most since COVID. And we watched you when you went to the flood zones in North Carolina, when you visited those precious girls at Camp Mystic down in Texas. You went to the fires, the Palisade fires in California, Las Vegas for the shootings during the first term. I know you went to Puerto Rico during the floods in the first time. So what is your message to Americans who are suffering right now?
I feel deep compassion for the people who are impacted by this storm. I know that federal government is working hard to provide assistance to all who need it. And as Americans, we need to help each other.
According to reports, that is the most flight cancellations we have seen since the height of the COVID pandemic. This comes on top of a relentless season of disasters. We have seen flood zones in North Carolina, we have seen the Palisade fires burning in California, we have seen flooding in Puerto Rico. It feels, in many ways, like the map itself is under siege. But the pressure isn't just coming from the atmosphere, it is coming from the streets. While the storm rages, there is a different kind of storm happening in Minnesota. We are seeing significant anti-ICE protests, but it has gone beyond peaceful marching. There have been shootings. The situation is volatile. The world feels divided right now. There is immense pressure on both sides, and it is in this specific context, this convergence of natural disaster and civic unrest, that the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, has decided to speak out. She sat down for an exclusive interview on Fox News to discuss these crises, and her message was explicit. She is calling for unity. She addressed the situation in Minnesota directly. She mentioned that her husband, the president, had been in contact with the governor and the mayor of the affected areas. The goal, she says, is to bring calmness to the area. She stated clearly, "We need to unify. I'm calling for unity."
We need to unify. I'm calling for unity. I know my husband, the president, had a great call yesterday with the governor and the mayor, and they're working together to make it peaceful and without riots. I'm against the violence, so if we protest in peace. And we need to unify in these times.
Mm-hmm.
She acknowledged the right to protest, but she added a condition that has become a flashpoint in the national conversation. She said, Please, if you protest, protest in peace. She emphasized the need to avoid riots and violence. Now, this call for peace is landing in a very complicated environment. On one hand, you have supporters who see her as a stabilizing force. They call her a peacemaker. They view these statements as the words of a leader trying to hold the country together. But there is another side to this reaction. When you look at how the public is responding, the division she speaks of is right there in the open. Some Americans are skeptical. One commentator noted that there can be no unity with people that want the other side to die. Another critic questioned why she remains silent for a whole year if she is so against violence. This is the reality of the American landscape right now. The First Lady is calling for us to help each other, stating that, as Americans, we need to help each other and come together in this difficult times. She expressed deep compassion for those affected by the storm, sending her strength and love. But that message is fighting for airtime against a backdrop of intense polarization.
Did you run that by the president, or does he have to run everything by you first?
I told him that I'm writing the letter and if he would please give it to President Putin. We had a success. He wrote back right away. And I'm still working to unify more children. We are in the process. I hope we will have success soon again.
And interestingly, this interview was not just about crisis management. It was also a reveal.
You show some scenes of a typical marriage, a typical dynamic. There's one that made me laugh at the very end of the trailer where you're calling the president. You say, "Hi, Mr. President, congratulations." And he says, "Did you watch?" And you said, "I did not. I will see it on the news." So typical dynamic. Why was it important for you to include that scene? Because you didn't have to do that, but I'm glad you did.
I was very involved in the leading the production and choosing the trailer. I want to show the people that they will see the communications and private communications between me and my husband.
The First Lady is pulling back the curtain on the administration in a way we have not seen before. She is releasing a new film simply titled Melania. And the timing of this release, right in the middle of this turmoil, is significant. The film focuses on a very specific, high-pressure window of time. It covers the 20 days leading up to President Trump's second inauguration. Think about what that transition means. She describes the shift from being a private citizen back to being the First Lady. This is not a role you just step into. It is an entire operation. She talks about managing her business, handling the operation for immigration, and establishing the East Wing of the White House, all within that 3-week sprint. The film crew followed her every day from the beginning of January through the inauguration, and she made a point to say that this wasn't staged reality TV. She said, "You could only have a one take. Whatever happened, whatever the cameras caught, that was it." This gives the public a look at the machinery of the presidency. We see the Secret Service planning security. We see the discussions about threats on her life. She admits that these dangers are part of her everyday thoughts, saying, "We are living in dangerous times." But the film also shows the personal dynamics of the first family. There is a scene mentioned where she is helping the president prepare a speech. She jumps in, she adds language, she suggests phrasing. When asked about this, she was very candid. She said, "I give him my advice and I tell him what I think. Sometimes he listens, sometimes he doesn't." She revealed that she was helping him specifically with an immigration speech. This is a key detail. It confirms that her influence extends into the policy rhetoric that comes out of the White House. The film also captures the transition of power. It shows the interactions with the Biden family on Inauguration Day. Despite the political heat between the two camps, Melania Trump described the Bidens as very nice. She called it a very beautiful relationship that day, and noted that the ride to the Capitol was very cordial. It is a striking image. The Trumps and the Bidens sharing tea, driving to the rotunda, maintaining the protocols of democracy even as the political world around them burns. But perhaps the most surprising element of this new media push is not the movie, or the weather, or even the protests. It is the diplomacy. we learned about a direct intervention the First Lady made regarding international relations, specifically regarding Russia and the war in Ukraine. There has been a long-standing global concern about children, specifically children returning from Russian captivity back to their families in Ukraine. This is a humanitarian issue that has engaged world leaders. Melania Trump revealed that she got personally involved. She wrote a letter to Vladimir Putin. This was not a back-channel leak. This was an official act. She told the president she was writing the letter and asked him to give it to President Putin. And according to her account, it worked. She said, "We had the success. He wrote back right away." She links this letter directly to the reunification of children with their families. She stated, "I'm still working to unify more children. We're in the process." This is a significant claim. It places the First Lady in the center of a major geopolitical conflict, using her position to facilitate humanitarian aid. It aligns with how she describes her role in this second term. She calls herself action-oriented. She lists bipartisan legislation regarding foster care as a major success. She mentions working with tech giants like Apple's Tim Cook and the leadership of AMD. She is framing her tenure not just around the ceremonial duties of state dinners and Easter egg rolls, though she mentions those too, but around tangible policy outcomes. However, even this work faces scrutiny in the court of public opinion. When you look at how people are talking about this, the divide is stark. There are those who are mystified and impressed. Reports from a private screening of her film suggest that college students and teenagers were glued to the screen. Her husband, the president, watched the film for the first time recently and called it a must-watch. Even her son Barron, who appears in the film, reportedly likes it. Supporters online are flooding comment sections with hearts and praise. They say things like, "Americans love Melania," and "Best First Lady ever." They see her as graceful, comparing her to royalty. One comment even quoted scripture, saying, "Blessed are the peacemakers." For these Americans, she is a symbol of class and stability in a rough world. But the criticism is just as loud. And it is pointed. Some of the reaction focuses on her background. There are demands from detractors to see your papers, attacking her own immigration history. Others look at her lifestyle and her presentation and see a disconnect from the struggles of everyday people. One comment simply read, "Marie Antoinette." There is anger about the state of the country that she helps lead. People are frustrated by the power outages, calling them a national security issue. There are accusations that the administration is busy enriching themselves rather than serving the public. And there is a sense of fatigue. When the First Lady says in the movie trailer, "Here we go again," supporters see it as a classic line. But for critics, it might feel like an exhausting repetition of the same political battles. So, where does this leave us? We have a First Lady who is arguably more visible and more involved in the machinery of the White House than she was in the first term. She is writing legislation. She is corresponding with Vladimir Putin. She is producing films about her own tenure. She is asking the country to unify. She is asking protesters to be peaceful. She is asking Americans to help each other through devastating storms. But she is making these asks in a country that is fractured. The storm in the sky will eventually pass. The power will come back on for those 500,000 people. The flights will eventually take off again. But the storm on the ground, the division in Minnesota, the polarization in the comment sections, the split between those who see a peacemaker and those who see Marie Antoinette, that storm is much harder to weather. Melania Trump says she is mission-oriented. She says she wants to impact American lives. As we move deeper into this second term, the question is whether her brand of diplomacy and her call for unity can actually bridge the gap, or if the world divided she describes is simply too far apart to be pulled back together by a movie and a message. We will keep watching the situation in Minnesota, and we will keep tracking the recovery efforts for those battered by the storms. For now, stay safe and stay informed.